Good morning, Grid Connections listeners. On the Grid Connections podcast, we explore the cutting edge of electric transportation, clean energy, and how our electrical grid is tying all of it together. I'm your host, Chase, and today we have a returning guest who's been at the forefront of simplifying the EV experience, Matt Teske, the founder of Chargeway. In this episode, we dive deep into how Chargeway is revolutionizing EV charging with its user-friendly system, designed to make EV charging as simple as filling up with gas, if not simpler. Matt shares incredible insights on how legacy automakers are struggling to adapt to the world of electrification, the challenges of dealership EV sales, and how Chargeway's innovative solutions are making a real difference both for drivers and dealers. We also get into the future of vehicle-to-grid technology, home energy storage, and how Chargeway is playing a crucial role in helping more people confidently make the switch to electric vehicles. This is an episode packed with valuable information for EV owners, potential buyers, and really anyone interested in the future of clean energy. Before we get started, though, I'd like to ask a favor. If you enjoyed today's conversation with Matt Teske, share this episode with at least one other person you think would appreciate it as well. And don't forget to leave us a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help more listeners discover the show and stay connected with the latest in electric mobility. And with that, enjoy. Can you just give us a quick little background on you and the great technology you guys offer?
Definitely. Well, Chase, great to see you again. Thanks for the invite. Chargeway. Again, Matt Teske, founder of Chargeway, and Chargeway is a software platform, and we focus on our mobile app for EV drivers to simplify the EV charging experience. We take all of the engineering data and all of the car side, charging side, and we translate that into simple colors for plug types and simple numbers for power levels, so that you can choose whatever car you want, and then on the map you see what aligns with your car based on plug type and plug color and the power levels of each station, so you know what your wait time will be based on all the engineering by simply looking at a power level on the map. So at a quick glance, you can get a sense for, I can fill up in maybe 40 minutes at a level 6, or maybe an hour and a half at a level 5, or maybe 2 hours at a level 4. And that way you can navigate the landscape more easily with your vehicle that you've selected. And it works all throughout North America, iOS and Android, has a built-in trip planner that's automated and suggests your stops for you. You can filter it however you want to do it. We've got adapters included. So all the new adapters are coming out for people that can go to different stations, such as superchargers for now GM, Rivian, and Ford. It's all built in. So we're just trying to make electric fuel easy for people.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what you've been talking about for so long, really, is that focus on electric fuel and not thinking it was like, well, this is a 150 kilowatt DC fast charger versus the 7 kilowatt level 2. And all of this kind of just technical fog, if you will, that makes the experience so much more difficult for people trying to either new to electric vehicles or just even curious, that without kind of what you guys are offering and really simplifying that jump to electrification for a new buyer really can be kind of daunting, if not just say, you know what, I'm not going to do it altogether. And so I think that's really what's been great about your technology, and just to see how it's evolved too. And there's obviously some new kind of things we're going to talk about today with what you guys are offering. But I think I was even talking to someone a couple of days ago about this, with even all of the electric automakers kind of agreeing to go to the North American charging standard. There's still so much need for figuring out, like you're even talking about, we still have to deal with adapters. And even when 5 years from now or whenever that this has become fully integrated, I think there's still so much need for just around figuring out where it is, and even looking at the native infotainment and route planners really in electric vehicles today. I think I was using one the other day, and the Tesla, it's really like you guys, Tesla, and that's about it as far as like having a system that really effectively works for route planning right now.
Well, I'd love to be put in the same conversation as their software, because they do it very well. But to your point, I think that I had a conversation about this earlier today, actually. The issue I think that's happening, especially from the legacy auto brand side, is that they've built the cars with the big batteries in them. So now they're building electric cars, right? But the software side is also not their prowess. So they are seeking out software support wherever and however they can, whether that's Volkswagen trying it internally with Cariad, and then finally switching over to partnering with with Rivian for Volkswagen side. But also, brands like GM that are working with Google, for example. They're all going to wherever they think the software can help make it happen for them. I think the Volkswagen Rivian connection will be, I think in time will work out pretty well, because Rivian is more of a brain trust around kind of the Tesla approach. There's a lot of Tesla alumni that are there.
Yeah.
But then you look at like legacy brands like GM and working with Google, you kind of have this issue of GM knows they need a better software solution for in-vehicle software, and they're going to a very large-scale software provider that has a lot of prowess in it. But you then have Google not really living out the fact that they're building software for cars; they're building software for a lot of things. So it's not
Right.
necessarily that they fully understand what needs to be built, and they're kind of expecting GM to translate to them or other automakers to say, "No, no, no, we need it to do this," And GM, I mean, other legacy brands, they may not. I mean, I just don't see that they necessarily fully understand that, because we're still seeing things
Yeah.
like Ford's announcement this last week of, okay, we've got a brand new announcement about charging again, and we're just going to install your
Right.
home charger for you, and it's going to be free. And then we've got the Blue Oval network still, and it's amazing. And we've got roadside assist. I was looking at the 4 talking points that were posted with that announcement. I was kind of like, okay. And I thought, sure, shouldn't this just have been a thing from day one that you were focusing on? But I think it was kind of more evidence around the fact that when it comes to charging, whether we're talking software or strategy around how we communicated to buyers, there's just still a ton of gaps that are not fully yet understood,
Oh
I
yeah.
think, from the legacy world. So, yeah.
No, and I think I'm really curious to see, mentioning the Ford rollout, how that's going to happen, because I think it definitely has a lot of good potential, and there's a lot of great things they're including, but it also kind of shows to me, like kind of what you've alluded to, some of the gaps still in that knowledge. Like, well, it's charging and there's home charging. Let's just find a partnership. Someone else will do it. Then it's taken care of. Then they'll buy these electric vehicles, right? Versus kind of
Yeah.
like flipping the mentality around, like, okay, or even really just trying to figure out that first principles and going to what is the problem, and
Yeah.
figuring out what that truly is before you try to solve it.
Well, that's a great point. And the first principles idea that you just mentioned, I mean, I think as we've been saying, and I've been, Charge has been saying, and I've been saying for what now is like the better part of a decade, is, it is about the new fueling experience and how it aligns with the vehicle you select and the lifestyle that you have, and how you make it simple for people to naturally get themselves into that. And I think this, the announcement from Ford, I think, is another example of the disconnect that the automakers are having with how they're being able to train and leverage the dealers to do a lot of this
For
work on their
sure.
behalf. And the dealers, there's, from the dealer side, there's been some elements of embracing EVs. There's been some elements of them saying, no. I mean, and again, from rooftop to rooftop, it can differ, obviously, showroom to showroom.
Yeah.
I think that is going to still be something that the legacy brands, this is just an example through Ford of just saying, we are going to like smooth the runway so much to say, we'll pay for it. We'll just do it. If you have a home, we'll just take care of it. We don't even care anymore. And that's all that has to be translated to the showroom. I think that's just an example of a legacy
Yeah.
brand saying, we're just having to resolve some of these hangups for people saying yes to our products. But I still come back to the fact that, if people don't realize there's another fuel option out there, and they're not thinking of, I want to buy a car that runs on electricity because of the benefits around that, then we're still going to have a lot of vehicles sitting at lots now, because we've moved beyond the early adopters that did all their homework. We are now hitting
Yeah.
that chasm and an adoption curve. And so that's, I think, something that, we're just going to, until we address this, to your point, until we ask what is the problem and address it correctly. Again, I watch football all the time. I don't see an ad for electric fuel, but boy, do I see fossil fuel commercials. I
Yeah.
mean, there you go. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like a broken record at this point, but damn it, I think I'm right.
Well, I think what's also really interesting about that is, I think just looking at legacy automaker, there's such a big disconnect, I think, between the boardroom and then the actual engineering of the vehicles. Still, it's gotten
Sure.
better, but like, I think a great example of that was kind of just the North American Charging Standard uh, announcements that were kind of executed by these legacy car companies a little over a year ago now,
Yeah.
saying just
Wow.
like, you know what, if the CCS thing's the issue, hell with it. We'll just go do what Tesla's doing, and that'll solve the problem, right? And
Right.
then it was kind of caught off all these engineers actually building the products. Like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah.
Off guard.
I've heard that. I've heard those stories from people that are inside the some auto brands saying, we had no knowledge of this. We read the press
Yeah.
release just like you did, and we're like, we decided what? So yeah, that was, again, that was a bit of I mean, again, I will give credit to Jim Farley, for basically just saying, look, I finally realized I need to address this, and what that then
For sure.
did on behalf of incentivizing and encouraging others to do the same. So again, my opinion is Tesla's plug design here in North America, without a doubt, is more elegant than anything else out there. It's simple, it's lightweight, it's the same at home, away from home. I mean, the beauty of design in that respect was designed for people. It wasn't an engineering solution
Right.
that then just
Right.
that was handed to people. So I think that's a good thing. But the problem, to your point, is the knee jerk. We'll just do this. It didn't take into
Yeah.
consideration other elements of, okay, because of software in the background, how do we explain that not every supercharger is accessible via these adapters? How do we contend with the fact that the connector ports on these vehicles are not uniform, and so we're blocking chargers if an F-150 pulls up? I mean, it just feels like it's designed chaos still in some ways, even though on paper it sounds like it was a better decision, and I think it'll
Right.
prove to be, but it's going to be some pain along the way. So
When I think the next part of that I was going to go is not only do you have this kind of design, I like that design chaos internally at the organization, but then you have the dealership level of it.
yeah,
And I do agree with you where it's like I've even had some recent experiences with dealerships. And to be honest with you, I thought the salespeople themselves were nice, great, and understanding. But anytime I asked about electric vehicles, they wanted nothing to do with it.
sure,
Partially understandably, they have a quota. They like there isn't a huge incentive for them to go down that path to ask all these questions to figure it out, whereas they know they can just kind of huck the combustion vehicle. But the
hmm
part that really surprised me too, that just was this another level of and I think just in the realm of EVs and EV charging, the old saying of like the path to hell or the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
oh yeah,
And one of the things they were talking about was just like these EV incentives where they're just like, well, this one qualifies for 3750. This one doesn't qualify at all.
yeah,
They qualify if you lease them. And so
yep,
there's just like all this like well-intended things that really make at the end of the day for a lot of dealerships. Not that it doesn't happen, but I mean, when you're the salesperson that has to hit a quota by the end of the month, or they lose their job or whatever, it's just like, okay, I'm just going to sell this combustion engine vehicle because I know they'll at least understand I can go on the next thing.
yeah. No, I mean, no, you're very correct in that. I the incentive piece and how it was designed, again, how the politicians got involved with this in the last few years around reimagining the federal rebate and things of that nature. Again, best of intentions. They wanted to, on one
Yeah,
hand, maintain giving a financial benefit to consumers. On the other hand, they wanted to incentivize automakers domestically to, produce, mine for minerals, and do all that stuff in North America to encourage job development inside the EV world. All great with
for
intention.
sure.
But yeah, to your point, it's like, how does that translate to a sales experience and an ownership experience? And the answer is,
Yeah.
in both cases, it's like, well, this still is not working out in a way that people are going, yay. So, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like I've had this conversation with you and others in the industry so many times where,
I know.
and there's no easy fix to it aside from admitting when you've got a problem. I mean, so to
Yeah.
that example, for our conversation we just had about like the NACS connector, that was the legacy automakers admitting they had a problem as it related to ease of access to electricity as a fuel type away from home. And that's why they said,
Right.
we'll just wave a white flag and embrace Tesla's approach. It then forced the rest of the industry and every other network and hardware manufacturer to say, all right, well, now we have to add the Tesla connector to all of our stuff. Otherwise, we're going to become antiquated immediately. It then blends into the adapter conversation for, oh God, how long is that going to last? And if you ask someone like Gabe
Right.
Klein at the Joint Office, I think it was like a year ago now, he did an internal video with where Steve Lomley, one of the guys at the Joint Office, they were chatting about some of these challenges. And Gabe just said, he goes, oh yeah, adapters are a part of the EV ownership experience in North America for the foreseeable future. It's just like, that's the casual of saying like, yeah,
Right.
this is a decades long issue that doesn't solve
Yeah.
itself overnight. So no, it's there's no easy answer right now. And the thing that concerns me is the fact that the old cliche of you never get a second chance to make a first impression. We have a lot
Totally.
of the public right now that has just been hearing nothing but things about EVs for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And have we lived up to that hype, whether it's automakers or charging or you name it? And there's a lot of people that have basically called the industry's bluff and said, I don't think you were ready. And in reality, the product is ready in so many ways based on who you are and where you live. It could really meet your need in a very elegant way. But that hasn't been the narrative. We've just been approaching
Right.
selling cars the same way we always have. It's like, guys, that's not how we can do this now. So I think in some ways, I think the industry has been shooting itself in the foot a little bit. And we've got to pivot and change some ways about how we're approaching go-to-market strategy, communicating it to the public. That's what Chargeway is about.
Well,
Like, we've been
I
saying
think
that for a
that's
long
a
time.
good segue. I'll give a shameless pitch to Chargeway.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are working on a lot of new things like Chargeway Plus program.
Mhm.
But I think what is really cool is you guys are much more than just an app. Obviously, you do a lot of work with dealerships and kind of getting
Mhm.
beacons in the stores. So maybe you can kind of share anyone that might not be familiar with what your work there has been at Chargeway and what that kind of helps accomplish with these difficult conversations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what the first thing we identified rather 5 years ago was, okay, if the pain point is we got to help people understand how to buy these and also sell them, these being electric cars, and the biggest challenge was explaining charging. So the Chargeway software platform is designed to really live in the customer journey. So we can put our solution on a dealer website, on a utility website, and show that if you choose this car, we make it easy for you to see where you charge, how you charge, plan a road trip, etc. But that same solution can then live in a showroom at a dealership in a kiosk format. And then the same solution can be
Right.
downloaded to your pocket on an iPhone or an Android phone. And that means that you keep a consistent visualization, explanation, and experience through the process of hopping through the hoops of did I finally buy the car? And so the retail experience and the kiosk, the beacon as we call it, is really meant to be an electric fuel sales expert on the showroom floor at any showroom that's dedicated to that brand of vehicle. So if you're in a Volkswagen
Right.
showroom, it showcases how that works for Volkswagen EVs. If you're in a Chevy showroom, same thing. And we've had a lot of success getting it into showrooms and training and showing dealer sales reps. Look, if you get this question, here's your response. You get this question, here's your response. We had a great quote given to us the other day. We have a program in the state of Michigan that was funded through the state of Michigan and working with utilities in the state to deploy beacons into showrooms throughout the state to get different feedback from different buying geographic areas. And one of the people from the program went and visited a dealership that has a beacon, and they had recently been trained. And at the end of the conversation, this person from the state of Michigan said, I have to be perfectly honest with you. At the end of it, it was very clear that that sales rep had really leveraged that tool in their sales experience, in the sales process, rather. And by the end of it, I was convinced, like, I could buy this car. And I said,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the point. And so their response was, no, you could tell that sales rep loved using it because it did answer questions easily, visually, and it made it so that I could feel confident. And so that is it. That's where we are at. But as a small company, we have to find the right partners to help us distribute that solution as far and wide as we
Yeah.
can. Utilities have been a great partner in that process. Obviously, states where we've been able to get grants have been a great part of that process. But at the end of the day, the beacon and the mobile app are designed to show you where you can charge the vehicle you've selected, how long it'll take, and make it simple to navigate all that design chaos we were talking about. So
No, I think it's such a really cool technology because for like the dealership experience and especially for dealer salespeople in dealerships, it's almost kind of like an electric vehicle Rosetta Stone sort of thing, where it really
yep.
does translate a lot of these different ideas and makes it. And I mean, for me, even personally, being a visual person, I really like that it is not just like another flyer. You can kind of tap the screen and it kind of just starts kind of changing these. It's just another level to engage with it and really is kind of a helpful sales tool.
Well, and the idea is car salespeople, they know how to sell the benefits of a car. They really do. I mean, that's why car sales they've been around for a long time, and people get into it. And it can be very successful professionally. That's the catch, though, is they're not selling cars anymore. They're selling a new fueling experience,
Yeah.
and no one told them that. And the automakers, in their attempt to address it, whether it was GM having their GM EV Live website where you could get a walkthrough with something. I did that a few times just to see what it was like, and you can just tell that it's an automaker's approach to trying to explain something complicated by kind of glossing over the realities of why it's complicated,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to make it feel like it's good. And in reality, it's like, yeah, but
It'll
you're
just work.
yeah, kind of like, and I mean, I was, and these were
It's not an
loaded
Apple
questions,
product.
right?
Right.
Right. It's just like, guys,
Yeah.
the Apple product is a closed ecosystem in the way that Tesla is, and so that's
Right.
what made the
Exactly.
Tesla experience so great. And I think that that's a
Yeah.
software-minded approach to the product development. So I still think we have, without a doubt, the most effective software and strategy for communication for how to explain charging, without question. We're just finally to a place, I think, where the rest of the industry is finally starting to really feel that pain, and they're like, "Ugh, we gotta keep figuring this out." And we've had more just natural interest in from stakeholders contacting us this year who have said, "We think that you have the right strategy." And your comment about Chargeway being the Rosetta Stone of the industry in that way. My brother said the same thing to me years ago. He said, "You literally have developed out like the Rosetta Stone of energy when it comes to using it as a fuel for cars."
Right.
And so appreciate hearing that again. I mean, it lets us know we're on the right path. So
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, I mean, just kind of staying on that topic, obviously there is some of it was Wall Street pressure, I guess, that these big auto companies were getting and looking at kind of Tesla's success among others, and looking at that platform idea where it's like, oh, you can have a car, you can have a solar on your house that powers the car, and then you have just a battery at home that we can also make and sell to you. This seems like we're just going to be printing money, and this is just an awesome opportunity. Let's do this too. And I think there's a reason it's also taken Tesla so long to
sure.
scale all this stuff, because there is a lot of even just, for example, and I believe you got a solar system on your home, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Just how different every house is, how every house is wired in a different way, and how if you're trying to get even a solar system work on it, let alone those systems to communicate,
Yeah.
and then you take it to the next level where you want to have like a vehicle to grid or vehicle to home
Oh
solution,
gosh, yeah.
and it's going to be wickedly expensive unless you kind of know what you're doing. And I think that was part of the reason Tesla took so long to actually come to market with a vehicle to home solution, because it is, unless you have something really simple and cost effective, it's a pretty expensive proposition. It sounds great on paper, the idea to back up your home whenever, but for a lot of them, kind of the approaches that we've seen, it has been easily a $10,000, especially if you need like a panel upgrade or anything like that,
Yeah.
to go to that kind of backup, unfortunately.
Well, and everything you just described is the problem that the promise of the EV is the
There's
problem.
payout at the end.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what most
We'll
people.
just get there.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, is the assumption is like, yeah, it'll just
Yeah.
work out. And it's like, well, we don't have any evidence of that yet. And I
Yeah.
think that a big part of that issue is we have a population, like a general public, that they're not really educated in how energy or electricity works. They just have been on the receiving end of the fact that industry has made it work. And so for 100 years, it's like, I flip the switch, the light goes on, I have a TV, I have a computer now that's all powered by this stuff. Hey, isn't that great? And all I have to do is pay a bill every month that I don't like paying. And
Yeah.
that's how they think of energy. They don't actually understand. I mean, what was there was a Netflix special. It was Zac Efron, I think, or whoever it was. It was him and somebody else, like going around and seeing different parts of the world and how they were managing natural resources and everything else. And there was this one episode about, they were in Iceland, and it was a whole plant about how they manage their energy. And they were explaining how it all helped electricity, in the country. He goes, I got to be honest, to me, electricity is just magic. Like, I don't understand how it
Yeah.
works, And I thought to myself, yeah, that's how most people do think about it, is they don't really comprehend how it works. And so that's the issue. We're trying to get people to embrace buying products that reimagine their engagement with a product they've never thought about. And
Right.
Tesla, they did make a pretty good ecosystem around that. They did, I think, to your point, I think they didn't jump the gun on the Vita X opportunity. On one hand, they could make money selling batteries at home. I get that. That's capitalism. But on the other side of it too, I think that what Ford encountered is what Tesla kind of imagined, which was, yes, you can say that your vehicle can be your backup, but that means your vehicle goes from being a vehicle to just being a battery. That's it.
Right.
And so the idea of then having to hook that up costing 10 grand or 20 grand for home upgrades, at that point, it's like, why not just buy home solar and home batteries and still have your vehicle as maybe additional backup?
Yeah.
It's still just a vehicle. So yeah, there's a lot of that to still.
Well, no, and I
unpack.
think you're spot on. I think it's just so interesting, because there have been well-intentioned, I guess, again, advocates and people interested in doing like vehicle to home, vehicle to grid stuff. But yeah, Tesla, I know that, and not to like just keep pushing that. I know I believe Rivian's going to do this with some of their next gen vehicles, but go to an AC based vehicle to grid system versus kind of this DC system we've seen with Ford and others.
Yeah.
That requires so many more home upgrades that has really made it expensive. Whereas with the Tesla solution, it's like a sub $1,000 gateway that they put in, and then it just talks with a panel and keeps it a lot simpler.
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of that thing. And you're totally right. You can sell more batteries. But what this does also finally unlock, and I mean, I'm personally interested in, is like, okay, I don't need to buy 7 batteries. If I can get it to work with my car, I'm okay to buy 1 or 2 when I want to drive the car around, and then the car is kind of the main thing. But
no,
that's a whole nother discussion.
That strategy is, I think, exactly how I view it. I mean, my wife and I have home batteries at our house, and if inevitably we can unlock our cars to be a supplement to that as well,
Right.
that's just gravy. But otherwise, we're off grid here in Portland, where we're based. We're off grid like 6-7 months out of the year. We just solely rely
which
on
is
our solar and
amazing.
home batteries, which is amazing. We're in Portland.
Yeah.
Imagine if we lived in
Yeah.
Scottsdale.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, what is it? Germany always gets like, this was a stat I learned years ago, but it was like Germany was getting like 30 to 40% of their energy from solar.
Yeah.
And their most sunny spot is still less sun than the least sunny spot of Oregon, which is Astoria, Oregon.
Wow.
And that they were still able to get so much solar, that kind of just tells me like there's a lot that need to be figured out in that realm too. But it can
It's
work just about anywhere when priced right and kind of figured out.
Oh no, without a doubt. I mean, that solar. I
Yeah.
mean, again, you've heard people like Elon and say it over the years, but there's been plenty of other people saying it longer than him, which is there's this gigantic energy source just hanging out every day, and
Right.
we can draw from it. It's pretty simple. I think energy storage was really the breakthrough on how we could really position that from a personal experience for people. And
Yeah.
that's why I referenced the concept of energy ownership moving forward here in the U.S. And beyond, where you have to help people see that they can kind of, especially if they're homeowners, renters maybe not so much, but
Right.
homeowners, they can be in many ways, the master of their own destiny around how much are we controlling our energy and what does that create for our confidence in either lifetime of cost savings or energy backup in case things happen with the grid, as we just saw with Hurricane Helene and how devastating that was across multiple states. That is going to be something that people are going to have to start actively thinking about. But then who's marketing this to them? Is it automakers? Is it utilities? Well,
Yeah.
not really, because the PUCs have made it clear that utilities can't just go and say, hey, buy this
Right.
product. And so there's a lot of bureaucratic hangups, legacy hangups around messaging, conditioning around the population about how they've been using products. There's a lot we're working through right now as an industry when it comes to clean energy. So
Yeah, and I think that is kind of one of those things. I'll change the subject here just because it does seem like we keep coming back to the same thing. Like we don't know what the answer is, and it's not great. But it is slowly improving, and
oh
I
yeah.
think what is really interesting is this is just kind of another example of, and once again, it's not to like focus on Ford in a negative way, but when they started doing these kind of vehicle to grid things, they partnered with Sunrun, which does a lot of solar and home battery backup stuff. So it seems like that'd be a great partnership. And
Mhm.
I think it's probably changed, but yeah, it was pretty clear early on, at least. They ran into a lot of issues with trying to get both these systems to talk together. And it's not just like, oh, we're the auto industry. We've been able to work with using contractors and parts suppliers for years. We'll just find our own supplier for solar and it'll be fine. And it kind of is just that unfortunate kind of wall that a lot of these companies keep running into around just like a lot more of this has to be done either in either done internally or have a clear plan of how to execute it internally. And so when you do go to suppliers and like you're kind of saying with Google on the software side, you
Mm.
have a clear message that you can say, this is what we need. We
Yeah.
know we can't do it, but we need you to build it. And if you don't have that, then you do kind of run into this cyclical issue.
Oh, yeah. I think what you're defining there is if you don't have a vision for the
Yeah.
product experience and you're the decision maker around that, well, then if you just decide to do a parts bin approach or a partnership approach that you think is gluing together what you're trying to replicate, which is what you're seeing the competition do, yeah, you're not going to create an end game for consumers where they'll say, "Wow, this was really well executed or really well thought out." They're going to have pain points that will make them say, "I wish I hadn't done this," and that's the last thing you need,
Right.
because then inevitably you create a skeptical buyer in the future. And I think that that's the biggest challenge right now, and a big issue and risk right now for the EV industry is we are trying to get product in the hands of the public, and we're trying to translate the value proposition beyond just financial and whatever ways that make people feel comfortable and confident. But we don't have the best go to market strategy for every brand out there. It is unfortunately creating some product skepticism based on experience. And that's where, again, we just need a better, exactly, you said it, we just need a better strategy on what the vision is, as opposed to we just gotta. And I think there's been billions
Yeah.
spent now on the we just gotta.
Yeah.
As you said, you're like, oh, these people that were making these decisions in these boardrooms, because they're like, oh, look what the competition is, and we got to meet and match that. And I mean, I recently was on another podcast, and they had another conversation about this, where I said, wait a minute, so Jim Farley, as an example, I credit him for saying we got to make a switch around our charging experience publicly. But the way that it was framed was I was out with my family. We're on a road trip with one of our Ford electric vehicles. And we were just not having the best of time figuring out the charging experience. But my kid pointed out, look at a Tesla thing. It seems to be easy for them. He's like, gosh, yeah, you know what? You're right. Let's just try to partner with them. And I remember saying, I was like, wait a minute. That's when you had that moment? Like you've
Yeah.
spent billions of dollars on this product development, and that's when you had that moment. And that just shocked me, frankly. That bowled
Yeah.
me over.
Well, I think, I mean, and maybe that's just a fun example or kind of like because I've heard that same story too, and I kind of got the same thing, and I was like, well, maybe just sounds better than our analysts showed me all the data, and we realize we have to do this. But no, I think that's another thing that we unfortunately talk about a lot on this show, where you have people making decisions, not just even in companies, but just like around policy that
Sure.
don't actually drive electric vehicles.
Oh yeah.
And so it can be so puzzling from the outside in of like, why doesn't this just work? Or it's literally just plugging something in like I do my phone. Why doesn't that work?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it really does, you really do need that day to day, maybe pain of
Yeah.
trying to do it yourself to realize how big of an issue and how serious this is to be solved correctly.
Yeah, no, that's so important that you have to have a lived experience with the product that you're trying to
Yeah.
get the mass market to buy. But in again, as I said, like with regard to like Jim Farley and Ford, on one hand, I give him full credit for having the self awareness and actually having the balls as a CEO of a major company to go
Oh, for
pivot,
sure.
pivot. We're making a pivot. But then on the other hand, I'm like, why on earth did it require that? Like, how is it you didn't have the team or
Yeah.
again? And I think it's your point is the living it out. And in I think that that's because they were approaching it how they always have for product development, which is we make cars and trucks. We build them in the way that we think is going to be marketable to the public. We've heard that electric
Yeah.
vehicles are the future. We've been mandated in some ways, so let's figure it out. And so their approach was how they've always done it, which is drawing board, get the vehicle designed. Now we got to put a big battery in it. Where do we get the software from? We source it as we always have. And then, like when Mary Barra was interviewed now 7 years ago when the Bolt came out and was asked, what's your plan for infrastructure? And on that day, she said, we don't do that. Now, their tune has obviously
Right.
changed. They got partnerships with EVgo and go down the list. But the fact that there was not, again, this gets back to the vision point. There was no one internally that was embracing the vision of that evolution. They were
Yeah.
and still are being very reactionary. And this is where people like John McElroy, who's been on your podcast before, and I enjoy chatting with him, hearing him explain what he sees and product differences between like what he's testing from China and what he's seeing domestically or
Yeah.
from Europe, and how he's just like, you can tell there's a different vision here. You can just tell they understand it differently. And I think that you then couple that with the fact that we now have tariffs keeping the public from experiencing these
Right.
products. And I think, yeah, the American public is going to be sheltered and insulated from maybe seeing what the future of their energy and transportation world can be because of these things. And I don't think that's the right path forward to keep domestic brands competitive. I don't think it's a good strategy. So,
For sure. No, I agree with you there, and I guess that's kind of an interesting thing that we talked about a little bit before the show was just kind of the scale back we're now seeing
yeah.
indirectly, kind of with the tariffs too. But yeah, the scale back from OEMs, and I'd be just kind of curious, maybe what you're seeing in that regards, or just what even your thoughts are about that right now.
I think the tariffs that we're seeing are with the kind of again, with the path to hell is laid, but it's paved with the
Yeah,
best of intentions kind of thing. We're looking at a situation by which policy has been driving a lot of these decisions around. Okay, how are we trying to help industry create jobs, compete, improve? But if industry is not embracing those policies and saying we do want to compete, we do want to improve, we do want to evolve, I think that the pullback we're seeing is based on the fact on one hand they're being protected, they don't really need to be as
yeah,
competitive as they should be, and on the other hand they're looking at it saying, okay, well, practically speaking, what's happening at our showrooms where we're trying to sell these products, and we're starting to see that EVs are starting to pile up at showrooms, and we're seeing various brands talk about it. Let's be very clear though, EV sales are still going up. I mean, they're not flatlining, they're not going down, they're just not this crazy spike of a sale that I think some people
the
might have
hockey stick
anticipated.
growth.
Yeah, but we're
Yeah,
still seeing sales. And again, if you're in an urban city center, you're seeing the fact that, yeah, there's more EVs and more models on the road. Variety's hitting more. We're seeing the GM with the Equinox, the Blazer, the Silverado, the Denali. Those are good things, right? So
yeah,
my concern then is as to what we're seeing on these pullbacks. again, it gets back to what I've often said, which is, an EV is just a car. People need to see it as that's a reliable car, and it is coupled with a fuel that they know what it is and they know how to use it and they can trust it and it doesn't overwhelm them. And I think that
Right.
we're now seeing that real pain point live out, which is, why would the public rush into the dealerships to buy a car that they perceive that they can't trust? And
As
that's
being
not because it's a
problematic.
car. Yeah, it's because
Yeah.
of how they understand how they use it with the fuel. And so, I'll keep saying that until it sinks into the industry. I feel like but is that the only problem with what we're seeing in the industry? No, it's a collection of problems. It's a and you can't sell vision. The amount of times, I mean, how many companies have basically put on market what they want to do, and others have attempted to copy it, and they just didn't get it right. I mean, good example is the iPod. The iPod comes out,
Yeah.
and every major like Microsoft, Dell, well, you have to have an MP3 player, and they come up with this
Yeah. Yeah.
brick that has songs in it, and then you go, okay, but
Right.
why would I buy yours when I have access to this store that has all these agreements with all this music that it syncs right to my computer? And gosh, it's a seamless. Wow, Jobs really thought that one out. Whereas everyone else was like, here's a thing that plays songs that are digital. It's no different than what we see happening in the EV industry right now, which is here's a car with a big battery in it that runs on electricity. It's like, yeah, but you didn't think about the software, the charging, the mobile app, the energy connection. And they're reacting in real time to try to figure that out. So,
Well, and you also brought up a really interesting point about EV sales aren't skyrocketing, but they're still growing.
yeah, yeah.
And when you look at the actual, kind of speaking of John McElroy, this is one of the things we talked about was the actual auto market's actually shrinking pretty considerably compared to what they had expected it to be even earlier this year for
Mhm.
this year's total auto sales. So it is, I think, definitely one area to still be optimistic that sure, it's not growing as fast, but when you look at the larger automotive market, the fact that it's even growing at all this year, if you're kind of paying attention to what else is going on, is actually still pretty impressive. And I
Yeah.
completely agree with you on the vision part of it versus just like, oh, here's a competitive product, here's a widget. People are buying widgets, right? And not
Yeah.
understanding that there's kind of the platform or overall experience that attaches with that.
Yep. No, I think, and it's interesting too. Is like the latest graph I saw about this, and I forget who shared it, but the data effectively expressing that peak combustion vehicle sales actually happened in 2017, and from that year, we have been seeing combustion vehicle sales go down, and plug-in hybrid, and electric
Right.
vehicle sales go up. I mean, hybrids still just run on gasoline. I'm not a huge fan of lumping them in. If it doesn't run on electricity, where you can actually fill it up with electricity, I'm like, that's not an electric car. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's true. We are seeing the variety of fuel sources being electric and how that pairs to sales. It is that those sales are going up incrementally, combustion sales are going down, even if we're seeing a tapering of vehicle sales overall in the
Total
market.
sales. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still seeing that EVs are gaining traction. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a soft skepticism from the public, and there's a consumer psychology piece to that where people are, well, on top of it, this is where John would just step right in and go, these cars cost too fucking much, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would
But I
say
mean,
like,
I think what you're saying is also true. It's just like it's a smorgasbord of like pick one issue of many as to why that it's shrinking in general. But yeah,
yeah,
exactly. The overall cost is still pretty damn high.
yeah, interest rates are not conducive to someone
Helping
buying a new car right
either.
now, and
Yeah.
so I think those factors, and what John, I'm pretty sure was on your podcast, made an interesting comment about how the prices skyrocketed in the last 4 years for cars. I mean, it went up was like 30% or something ridiculous. It was just like he was like,
Yeah.
and that they did that to the public, but so we're not going to see them reduce the prices. They're hoping that the cost of living and wages will somehow catch up to the fact that, oh, that's what a car costs now. And I thought that
Yeah.
was a very interesting take, and also explanation about the challenge that the industry faces, because we don't necessarily know how that's going to go from a wage perspective. And on top of that, if the only thing they can do is start giving more incentives back to the customer in some fashion, well, the cars that have
Yeah.
built-in incentives will probably be the ones that arguably could sell better, which are electrics. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot to unpack with that, but I just think that overall, the industry is still going in the right direction. It's
For
just that
sure.
there's so much of it that on a day-to-day basis, it can create a conversation around consumer confidence, sales confidence, you name it. So
For sure. And I think that is kind of an interesting point too of where the tariffs come back in. It's like, well, the advantage of these cheaper electric Chinese cars. Obviously, there'd be safety standards they have to pass, but we are seeing
Yeah.
that with some of the ones going to Europe.
Yep.
That would come in and kind of meet that need for the lower point. And in some ways, the fact that again, we're trying to protect workers and stuff, but that is also kind of unfortunately hurting the American consumer that
Yeah.
they can't have access to a cheaper vehicle when, yeah, there's just been this focus on kind of staying at this price point. We're starting to
Well,
see a couple come down, but a lot of the
yeah.
time that has been electric vehicles, and that's only after they've qualified for like $10,000 worth of credits, which I think if you can qualify and get that, great. But it just
Yeah.
also doesn't seem sustainable. And I can
No.
also get the argument from people who kind of want to hate on it. It's like, well, it only makes sense if you have to give them all these credits, which I don't think is true. But it's like, unfortunately, a fair point, or you can see why people are kind of getting to that mindset with just how the current status quo has been.
Well, and we have subsidized fossil fuels to the tune of billions of dollars a
Now, like,
year,
yeah,
you know,
that could
but no
easily be
one,
its own podcast, right?
yeah, no one actively talks
It's
about it
not
because
so clearly
yeah, it's
labeled.
not
Yeah,
yeah, it's not at the point of sale that by the way, we've subsidized the hell out of this.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
that we've all been on the receiving end of the benefits of that happening behind the scenes, which has helped basically, hold up the auto industry through combustion vehicles for a long time. And we've benefited as
Yeah.
consumers for having cheap gas. But I mean, people will learn that over time. I just think that, we've come to a place where, there's just again, there's no easy answer. We have a lot left to do. But if you compare to where we were 10 years ago, it's like, holy cow. Like, for all
Yeah,
the difficulties that exist in the marketplace and with society and politics and go down the list of everything, it is incredible that the EVs have been able to get through what they've gotten through. And at the end of the day, lessons will be learned through automakers and everybody from a go to market strategy. Well, I hope the lessons are learned. And I think the pain points that we're now
yeah,
seeing
yeah.
that are happening to be more obvious, that frankly, in Chargeway's world, we look at it and say, hey, this is something that we can help solve in a lot of ways for a lot of different stakeholders and obviously for the public. I think it's a good thing. But again, just we're at the beginning of this. We're all going to be old, and I've got gray hair already, but we're going to be old and gray haired at one point long in the future. We'll be like, man, that was a challenge, but boy, we got through it. So,
For sure. And I mean, it's kind of funny even looking. I was talking with someone else about this. I think they were kind of complaining about CCS, and I kind of had to put like my grandpa voice on or something and say, well, back in my day, 10 years ago, we were just happy to find level 2 chargers,
sure. Yeah.
let
Yeah.
alone the concept of anything charging over 50 kilowatts. And even a decade ago, it was like you had the Model S at the high end, and then there was like a Nissan Leaf and an i3.
Yeah.
And it was such a small portion of the actual auto market, or I guess auto buying market, that EVs could even be a thing for. And now to see how many more models and areas that are covered by not just different EVs, but different automakers too, is definitely something to be also optimistic about.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going the right direction. I think the fact that we're seeing more people that are joining owners groups on social media, for example, you'll hear them ask a question, you'll hear them talk about their EV buying or ownership experience, and you can genuinely tell it's like this is not a person who's an early adopter or
Yeah,
innovator. They really really wanted to give this a shot, and I think that's where there's positive evidence around we're going the right direction. It then just turns into how great of an experience can we actually give these people so that they will say
for
to their
sure.
friends and family, and even for a future purchase, they'll say, "Yeah, I'm gonna do that again." And we've still got some ways that they might say no, that we're working through. But at the end of the day, yeah, they have over 100 vehicle options to choose from now that have a plug from dozens of brands.
Right.
That's a big deal. That's a move in the right direction.
That seems unfathomable. I still kind of find that hard to believe,
Yeah.
which is crazy. But yeah, I guess one of the things since we have you on, I know I'm not sure how much you can share with us, but looking at Chargeway and you're talking about Chargeway Plus before we went on, and just I think that became an interesting thing to talk about with the time we have right now. Just what you can share about that, and for those listening, what they can might who might already be using Chargeway,
Mhm.
what they could be looking forward to as well.
Yeah, Chargeway Plus, I mean, it's designed to really just elevate the experience that people have within the Chargeway mobile app. So the Chargeway mobile app is free to use on iOS and Android. Chargeway Plus allows you to connect your vehicle directly to Chargeway. And so the telematics of your car, the state of charge, starting and stopping the charge, basically allows you to have a more automated experience with Chargeway so that when you are looking at public stations, for example, you don't have to go in and set what your battery is or what your charge limit is. You can just go
Right.
right to the map and say, okay, what's my charge time going to be at any given station? we wanted to remove some barriers of the manual process of understanding how it all works and just automate it more. And we're getting some great feedback around that. And that's, we launched it as a pilot with Austin Energy back in the spring. We then launched it to all of North America in the summertime. And really, we're just trying to give people the opportunity to give it a test drive. So you can try it for 30 days for free and see what it does for your
Cool.
experience based on your ownership. In time, we're going to build out more features as it relates directly to your home charging management experience, how you can see what's going on with your home charging sessions and what that's looking like for energy usage on a regular basis. We're adding in those features so that it's not just about having an easier public charging experience for what your wait time might be. It's also about what your
Right.
home charging management can look like, because those are really the two lifestyles, homeowner and non-homeowner. And we want people that are using our platform to feel that we've been mindful of their experience, regardless of what their lifestyle might be. And we are going to integrate more things over time that make the Chargeway Plus experience just more feature, more feature fulfilled, in the sense of what else can we add in that gives you real time around pricing, activation of charging sessions, things of that nature. Those will be elements we roll in over time that we really think is going to make a comprehensive tool that everybody's going to look at and say, well, depending on my lifestyle, this is a great fit because it gives me these features and it's
Yeah.
great. And then how do we use that to connect people back to experiences that matter to their lifestyle? So that's where we can partner with utility companies. We recently partnered with A to Z adapters for basically allowing a user to say, I don't have to go shopping for what adapter works for me. Chargeway just tells me. I added
Right.
my car and it says, these are your adapters you can use. And so little stuff like that for how we tailor the experience is what we're really focused on. So I do invite everybody to download Chargeway. You can try Chargeway Plus for free for 30 days, connect your car, and obviously give us as much feedback as possible, because we love knowing how we could be better. So
Yeah, and I guess for anyone listening, the link to Chargeway is always in the show notes whenever we have Matt on. So definitely check it out and give it a try if you haven't already. One of the things, I guess, from a more technical standpoint, I know it's been a little while since I played around with it in a car, that is the CarPlay integration with
mhm.
what you guys are doing. And is that still part of the free one, or is that now going to be kind of more, or I guess maybe with the Chargeway Pro, does that start unlocking some kind of additional cool things that you can do with that integration?
Yeah, so Chargeway Plus, I mean, basically, Apple integration for Apple CarPlay, just it's free to use with Chargeway.
Yeah.
Inevitably, the Chargeway Plus integration will allow us to create a more immersive interaction with what you can do with Chargeway via CarPlay, via Android Auto. Whenever we can release that, we've been working on it for a while, but we got to get that out. But that's the idea: is that if whatever you're doing in your mobile device, you can then obviously, if you're saying, I want to get real time pricing for what this might be at a location, I want to get an activated session here. That's what Plus will be able to provide you, whether it's in mobile or in CarPlay. The issue with CarPlay and Android Auto from an emulation perspective is they just reduce, through the functionality of the in-car screen from a safety perspective, what
Gotcha.
features you can have in the screen. So we have to be very thoughtful around what would someone want just for a quick glance and doing inside of the
Yeah,
screen
yeah.
of the vehicle. So you just don't have as rich of an experience through CarPlay or Android Auto. But
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember I was playing around. I forgot what car I was in. Oh, that's right. Okay, now I remember which one. I won't say it on here,
oh, okay,
but let's just say the native experience provided by the automaker was not great,
yeah,
and even the more limited, just like functionality I could use with Chargeway on the iOS, like just using it through CarPlay, was still a much better and like clearer experience than what
yeah.
was being provided.
Well, and that's getting back to our
Yeah.
conversation earlier about vision, is like you have an
Yeah.
automaker who talked to a software provider and said, just help us solve this. They weren't really providing the roadmap of how they knew it would be effective for a driver and their customer.
Right.
And the beauty of this is because we've got that in an app that anybody can use either for free or they can upgrade to ChargePay Plus, but they can also use that for CarPlay today. That's the beauty of the fact that we had the right vision. I'm happy and very proud of what we've built. But at the same time, I don't want it to just live in Chargeway. If we can work and partner with some of these companies, whether it's an automaker or someone else, we want to. We want to help them improve this experience,
Yeah.
because our mission was always make the electric vehicle experience more enjoyable for everyone, regardless of who they are or what they drive. And whoever we can work with on making that possible, that's what we want to do. So
Yeah, I guess for anyone who is listening, whether they be an automaker or work in a like DC fast charging company, I guess what could you share some examples of maybe what you've either done or would like to do to kind of help those kinds of people make their end all product be a lot better by incorporating Chargeway?
Well, the cool thing about our software is we can overlay it onto any other mapping solution, right? So, for example, I
Mm.
think that's one of the hiccups we keep seeing is that it's this afterthought component. For example, we've had
Yeah.
adapters built into our UI and interface for 5 years, and we knew that that was going to be an element of ownership moving forward, even 5 years ago. So now there's all this in-car interface where they're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way for us to apply adapters, turn them on? How does that change what's happening on the map? This is the best part about Chargeway is at a glance, you can look at the map and know that plug color means I can just plug in natively, or I've got to use my adapter. And that number means I'm going to be there for 15 minutes or maybe an hour just by glancing at the map. That's what
Yeah.
our system provides. And so if you're in a vehicle, that's what you want for ease of use. The fewer times you have to stare at the screen to figure something out or go through a menu or doing a filter, it's like, how about you just use something that was designed with intent and it had vision around how do we make this easy for everyone based on what we know they need to know? That's an example of where I know we could really help and work with a lot of these in-car experiences that various OEMs are working on. We could help make that and improve that in a variety of ways. And that translates right back to in-vehicle experiences for, like using things like push to talk and communicating to your car. Instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
saying, find me a CCS combo SAE standard 150 kilowatt DC fast charger
Yeah.
within
Right.
5 miles. It's like, hey, find me a green 6 within 5 miles. I mean, like basic stuff like
Yeah.
that. And how does that translate to more customers that maybe are bilingual or don't speak English? And how do we translate that for them? These are things that we were very mindful of, and that via our software, how it can be applied to user experience is where we can really, really help a lot of different stakeholders improve what the EV experience can be.
And it's been a little while since I've used the app, because I was playing around with it on a road trip about a year ago, and I'm trying to remember. Do you guys? And maybe it depends on the actual DC fast charging provider and what information they share. Does it share what like the availability of chargers is for certain companies or not? I couldn't
For
remember.
real-time status, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we do have real-time status for most of the major networks in North America.
Right, which is such a huge thing unto itself.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that
EVgo,
feature. Yeah.
Electrify America, Tesla Supercharging, Blink, and some of the regional like EVCS is mostly West Coast. We have real time integrated for them, and we're integrating more real time status for more networks on a regular basis. They're contacting us saying, "Hey, how do we do this?" So there's
Yeah.
ways in which we've maintained wanting to empower drivers, give them agency in their decision making, but also provide networks the ability to provide much better information via our platform. And so, yeah, the real
Yeah.
time status piece is important. And that's something that, again, we've integrated, with as many networks as we can. And we're going to keep improving on that as we go down the line. So,
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've always said about electrification is like for it to be successful, it doesn't have to be just as good. I mean, this is true with any technology. For it to be like the new standard, it can't be just as good. It has to be better.
sure.
And I think that's where some of these kind of real time functionality things are really cool, especially when you're on a road trip. If you
hmm
can see proactively where you can skip, or if you just go a little bit farther, it's going to be cheaper or quicker overall. That's just not. I mean, technically you could, but it's just something you don't really have available to you in a combustion vehicle, and
No,
it's requires so much more work. If even if you were to try and find some of this information, I think that's just some of the cool things that we're really seeing with what you guys do, and obviously, like Tesla kind of offers some of this information natively for their system, but having a much more just cross charge provider
hmm
solution is such a cool thing to see, and is really what EV drivers need. And I think kind of goes back to like how do you create an experience that's better and just more of a honestly easier to. And I think that example you just had about like trying to find like what's near me versus like I need to know a CCS between 150 to 250 kilowatt within a certain, like just making it more user friendly
yeah. Well, that's
than
a we
overcomplicating it.
that's the beauty of it
Yeah.
is if you give people a way to navigate the design chaos like we were talking about earlier.
Right,
If
right,
you
right,
give people
exactly.
like a system by which they can navigate it based on their own personal experiences, where they can look at it and say, all right, I've connected my whatever vehicle it is, my Volkswagen ID4 to Chargeway Plus, and I know my vehicle's level 6. That's the maximum. My vehicle's a level 6 car. I go to green stations. My current state of charge is 4%. It says I want to go to 80. I'm going to go look at the map. They can easily
Yeah,
then tap
exactly.
on a pin and go, I know instantaneously, based on the engineering information in the background that Chargeway's helped me with, that's a 40-minute charge at that station there, or maybe it's an hour charge there, or maybe it's 30 minutes here. And that beauty of simplicity around personalization is what we designed to be holistic and agnostic, in the sense that you can choose any automaker you want, and we will make that experience that way for any brand of vehicle or any model you choose. But then we're holistic in the sense that it is based on the landscape of what you have as options based on charging out there in the wild. And it's a lot to manage, it's a lot to curate. But I think drivers, as they become exposed to what they know they need to know over time, will appreciate the
Right.
approach that we've had. So
No, for sure. And no, and I think that's what's really cool about it too, is it is not only super approachable for new people, but it does kind of have those kind of pro features, if you will, that kind of like as you start kind of learning and kind of playing with this and getting that confidence of driving or road trip and EV more, you're like, okay, how can I hack this better?
yeah.
That that tool really does allow.
Yep.
I realize we're also kind of coming up on the hour here, so I want to be respectful of your time. But
Yeah.
I know you've been also, among other things you're doing at Chargeway, you've also been kind of the MC at some of the Electrify Expo events. Are you the one at New York City
Yeah.
coming up?
Yep.
Do you know what the dates are for that? I was just going to say, if there's anyone that's listening to this and wants to meet you in person, I think that'd be a great event to not just meet you, but obviously learn more about what Chargeway and the team does there.
Definitely, yeah. And no, if you want to meet me at the New York Electrify Expo, October 12th and 13th, I will be at that event. And the partnership we have with Electrify Expo has been a lot of fun. So the founder of the Expo, his name is BJ Burtwell. I got a chance to know him early on in my
Yeah,
career
he's
over
great.
20. Yeah, BJ's fantastic, and I met him over 20 years ago in my started my career in the auto world, in the auto aftermarket, and he's been in the world of marketing for a long time and events. Obviously, has a very good skill set for it, knows how to do it. We met and talked about his vision for Expo before COVID. And I was like, God, man, of all
Gotcha.
people, yeah, you could do this. And boy, does the industry need it. And so it's been really great to work with them. And his vision has always been, well, how do we make the experience easy for people at the Expo event? And how do we make it so that they will decide with confidence to buy an electric car? And he saw what we were doing at Chargeway, and he just said, look, I recognize that you are talking about the other side of the conversation. It's not just the vehicle, it's the fueling. And how do we roll that in? So we've been a partner to the Expo since day one. And my involvement with the event this year has been, there's an Amazon booth called the Amazon Recharge Zone. And Amazon is a
Yeah, I got a
partner.
cover for you while at the San Francisco one. So I had
Yeah.
some big shoes to fill.
Well,
No,
it's
that was great, and I think it's such a great thing that you've been doing for to just as of the many things you're doing right now. It's been such a great addition to the expos and having that there.
well, it's been fun. I mean, every city, every time we talk to people that are at the event, we get a chance to chat with industry professionals. We're kind of like this. I
Yeah,
just have a conversation with folks about what they're working on. Oftentimes, local people could be solar installers, could be local level 2 charging installers. Obviously, other big players from the industry we've talked with that are at every event. But it really is a chance for those who are at the event in person to hear these conversations, and we invite them in to say, hey, if you've got questions, like you just heard a 10-minute conversation about something. What's your question? And it's really fun because it personalizes, and I think it removes a little bit of that layer of intimidation that some people might have. And when we're
oh for
saying, no,
sure.
this is about having an open conversation, no dumb questions, come on by. It's been a ton of fun, and we get to showcase Chargeway inside of the booth through our mini beacon tablets that are there. And it's really a way for us to, again, have a narrative around, it's not just about the car, it's about the fueling experience. And like our conversation has shown, where does that branch to in the energy experience that you might have based on your lifestyle? It's where Chargeway wants to be. And it's been a lot of fun working with BJ and his team on just having that happen. So
No, and I think both Electrify Expo and what Chargeway do are very complementary in having that kind of very welcoming and also just kind of like total full package of kind of learning more about. I mean, what's cool about Electrify Expo is it's not just electric vehicles. They got electric vehicle charging, and
yeah,
then e-bikes, you name it, anything kind of mobility for anyone and everyone for the family is great. But then
yeah,
obviously how you guys approach it for just charging across the board at Chargeway too on kind of like the digital and software side of being an EV driver is such a much more streamlined and just overall much better experience than unfortunately still what we're seeing from the native stuff. So it's really great to have that, and I hope more do partner with what you guys are doing at Chargeway.
yeah. Well,
Matt, I just want to say as we come up at the end of this hour, thank you again so much for coming on today.
yeah.
Always a blast to talk with you, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Perfect. Well, again, thanks for the invite, Chase. Always enjoy the chats. Again, at the end of the day, things are progressing in the right direction. I think it's
Exactly. Let's end
awesome.
on an optimistic note. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. And
exactly.
I'm psyched about where things are going to go, both for the industry and obviously for what we're helping the industry do. So thanks again for the invite today.
Great. Thanks, Matt. That wraps up another episode of the Grid Connections podcast. Huge thanks again to Matt Teske, founder of Chargeway, for joining us again today and sharing his invaluable insights on how Chargeway is making the EV experience smoother, smarter, and more accessible for drivers everywhere. If you're as excited as we are about the future of electric vehicles and the innovations happening in the charging space, be sure to download the Chargeway app and give it a try. And don't forget to explore how Chargeway's solutions are already helping EV owners navigate the electric fueling landscape with ease, especially for those who work in dealerships and are just generally curious about electric vehicles and how to go on road trips with them. I've used the app plenty of times, and personally, I'm a very big fan. I think it's great to have more options like this out there. As always, we love hearing from you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with at least one other person who might find it interesting as well, and take a moment to leave a positive review on our podcast page. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but it also helps bring more great conversations like this to the Grid Connections community. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next week, this is the Grid Connections podcast signing off.